Chair Seachlog, and I am chairing the meeting today. So I'm going to call to order at 5:30. Can we have the roll call, please?
Committee Member Bickford. Committee Member Bickford.
Hi, here.
Thank you. Committee Member Metzenberg.
Present.
Committee Member Smith.
Here.
Vice Chair Bach.
Here.
Chair Seatslack.
I am here, and I think we have one more member just walking in.
Committee Member Rodriguez. Here. And then Committee Member Blackerby is absent. We have a quorum.
All right, and Ms. Grant, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
Okay, great. We're open for public comment. So this is the general public comment, at which point any member of the public can address the committee for up to 2 minutes about any subject within the committee's purview that is not scheduled for discussion today. Do we have any speakers?
We have no speakers today.
Okay, and Ms. Grant, are there any announcements?
Two announcements. The first announcement is the city recently hired a new mobility coordinator. Her name is Julia Garcia. She's coming from the Long Beach area, where worked for Cal State Long Beach for a lot of their transportation-related initiatives. So she just literally started the week of Thanksgiving, but we hope to have her before this committee in the new year to give an update on the B-Cycle program and the grant that she'll be working on that's targeted for our lower income communities and to increase B-Cycle memberships related to that. So that will be a little preview for next year, but we're excited to have her on board. And then the second announcement was just a big thank you for coming to TCC in December. We really had hoped to have the meeting in October, but it's not fun being ill. Our group is nice and healthy tonight, and thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. This was a regular meeting on August 28th, 2025. I was not here for this meeting, but I did watch the recording, so I think I'm able to vote. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion on the item? No? All in favor say aye.
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 And any oppose? Any abstain? All right, the motion is passed unanimously. Our next item is our main item for tonight is the Safe Streets for All planning effort. And we are, Ms. Grant, can you introduce the item?
Sure. So good evening again, everyone. Jessica Grant, Supervising Transportation Planner. With me tonight is Derek Bailey, our Principal Traffic Engineer, and Chelsea Swanson, our Project Planner. And we continue the discussion for the Safe Streets planning effort. And it's been great over the course of the year to have the different topics related to this planning effort. And tonight we're going to be focusing on the priority streets that we're recommending for further study based upon collision patterns that we're seeing and then feedback as well from the community. And so again, for the recommendation is just to really get your feedback tonight about those priority corridors. Again, we're not going to be going into a lot of detail on the what we're proposing. It's just that we are recommending these particular streets tonight that we feel are ripe for further study. And I just want to start off with background, and especially if there's anybody tuning in, I always like to start for context of it, again, for this action planning effort, that we were awarded a federal grant from the Department of Transportation, and the whole effort kicked off in the fall of 2024. We have 2 years to complete this planning effort, which basically is right around September of 2026. And the goal of the plan is to prevent traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries within the city while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all by strategically identifying infrastructure improvements that remove barriers to safe mobility. That is a mouthful, but what it boils down to, it's sort of the 2.0 of what we see of kind of over the next few years, we will have implemented pretty much the majority of the pedestrian master plan and bicycle master plan related projects and other projects related for safety. But unfortunately, our work is never done, and this is sort of the next phase, deeper dive into our roadway system. And as far as for the grant, we are required to have what you see in blue are the required chapters by the federal government of what we need to be focusing on. And of course, we could have additional chapters too. So really just to recap over the course of the year, we've presented in detail the safety analysis. And at that time, it was also paired when we talked to you about our safety analysis. It's not our first time thinking about safety, and so we had an accompanying chapter of the past and present approach to traffic safety, just to put it in context and what we have done and what we're currently working on related to safety. We also felt that we needed to revisit just the safe routes to school chapter from the pedestrian master plan, and is there anything new updates from a policy perspective to any projects around the particular schools that are within our city limits. Or if a school is outside of the city limits, but a route is within the city limits, is there any necessary changes to that? So, and then a big component of the planning effort is just going out to the community, and I believe that's what we presented last time, is what we've heard from the community with the traffic safety survey results, and that was kind of just a higher level of kind of what we were seeing from collision patterns, and if like our community members were aware of some of the most common collisions, and then also just kind of get feelers out there from how we could improve on messaging, and if there's any additional infrastructure improvements, et cetera. So all of that is all posted. We have the Safe Streets for All. I believe it's SantaBarbaraCA.gov/Safe Streets, and that has all the results of our survey on that website in case you ever want to go back to it. And again, tonight, get from the safety analysis and public engagement to date, we do have the areas that we really want to focus in on, and then eventually go to like types of project selections. And in the beginning of the new year too, I think we would probably in February be looking also at the equity considerations and some of the policies for your review as well. And then expect to see a draft plan in April of 2026. So before I go into what we're recommending for further study, again, I just wanted to have this slide as the reminder of this, again, based upon collision data. This is our high injury network, which represents 20% of our roadway miles, but this area, whether you're red, it's basically red and orange. So if you're in that area, that's where 88% of our severe and fatal injuries occur. And so, again, when we look at cities and limited resources, from a staff standpoint, from a monetary standpoint, how can we really move the needle? And so I think we always have to think strategically, and kind of the plan of attack that we see sort of for the next 5 to 10 years out is how can we really focus on engineering, education, enforcement solutions within these areas. And tonight, we're going to be going over what we think is the priority streets that we want to take a deeper dive in, and what we see is ripe for some potential engineering solutions. So this, again, the kind of network or the highlighted streets that you see, the underlying color in gray, again, is the high injury network. The areas that we'll go over tonight are in blue. That's where we're recommending areas for further study. The street segments that are highlighted yellow, that indicates where we've either have recently completed a project or we have a projects in design right now. And that's probably also over the past year. A lot of hearings have gone to, of course, the Cliff Drive Vision Zero project, the West Side and Lower West active transportation implementation project that has a lot of focused treatments on MODOC and San Andreas. And of course, Milpas is the other big target area. So we wanted to make sure that we haven't forgotten about those. It's actually really exciting times. We're in final design on all of those projects. As far as for further study, we're not, we are in the design, final design phase for those. So let's go over the areas that we're recommending for further study. What you'll see over these next several slides are the priority streets. They're not in order of importance, they're just in order of alphabetical order. And all the look and feel for each of these is that they'll have kind of the same sort of template. So I'm not going to go into every single detail or what's happening at every single intersection, but this is how we formatted it. It's similar to City of Burbank recently completed a Safe Streets plan, and we really liked the way that they presented their data. So we're sort of modeling it after that, but of course we make it our Santa Barbara flair to some of the graphics and style. But so anyway, and these next graphics will show where the corridor is and what the limits are. So in this example, it's Bath Street from Alamar to Mission area. So that's in the vicinity of Cottage Hospital. When we have a list of what the corridor characteristics are, what the speed is, what the observed speed is, what type of the average daily traffic that's on this particular street. And then we have the collision statistics. So so of course we covered what the total injury is, and then KSI means it's an industry term, but it's killed or severely injured. So yeah, that's the ambulance ride. So that's the number for this particular corridor. And then collisions by type, pedestrian collisions, bicycle collisions, and the collisions at intersections. And then the graphics below, it's not going to represent every single collision. We're trying to tell the story of like what the sort of the trend of the collision history is. And again, a lot of these maps are that will go into the plan are static maps. But what we're also hoping to do with this plan is to also like be creating data dashboards too. So eventually members of the public could look at the same information that we are seeing. So so again, for this, it's that we have by collision type, so it's a particular icon. So I'm spending a little bit more time on this slide just to give you a background. But say like at Alamar and Bass Street, so that like that particular icon is a side swipe collision. It's also interesting just to show get what came out in a lot of the story of collisions. This is the high rate of DUIs that we have in the city. So you'll see like the little martini glass when it's DUI related. That also signifies that that's not, there isn't engineering fixes for those either, but it's gives us an idea of where on the network we're maybe seeing pronounced amount of DUIs. And then again, that we have like a little bike icon when they're bike related collisions. And if it's vehicle and pedestrian, it's like the hexagon shape. So, but anyway, it's something, again, we wanted to look into a little bit more detail. Oh, and the stars are nighttime collisions, because that also is, if we're seeing hot spots for that, and that's also a reminder for us to check on the light, how is the lighting of that particular intersection, or the approach to the intersection, those types of things when we analyze it in further detail. The next priority street that we're recommending for further analysis is Calle Riel for Hitchcock to Pueblo. We do know for this particular roadway, it's part of our capital improvement program to have a multi-use path, essentially tying in from Oak Park all the way to out to La Cumbre. And so just because we have a priority corridor at certain streets doesn't mean that we can't, like, when we're looking at it, that it has to stop right there. We're still looking for network connectivity. But I just wanted to highlight that there is at least a known capital project, but it's not funded. And so I think when we look at this in further detail is to sort of look at what that layout might look like for the multi-use path, and just better for all road users. The next is Canon Perdido from State Street to Medio Road. This is in the vicinity of Santa Barbara High School. It's their back entrance to the high school, but widely used. And then, of course, Canon Perdido is just a very important east-west street connector into downtown as well. I know when we look at this street in a little bit more detail, we're very curious just to understand the dominant bike routes or bike movements, if like east or west is favored. And again, when we're thinking of right-of-way, there's always a limit on how much what we can do. And this is one area that we're limited, but we're very curious to understand that we could follow up in more detail with traffic counts. In Castillo, this is from Mission to Mitchell-Torena Street. Another like Mission and Castillo, like from the very popular intersection, of course, and ties into the freeway on and off ramps and all of that. So I think we're trying to understand a little bit more of some of the movements, especially at Mission Street and Castillo. The next corridor is Chapala from Alamar to Mission Street. And this is something where We have done some improvements. It continues to be on watch, but just again trying to understand collision patterns. It's also important to note too that on some of these are corridors where we may have implemented a project, but when we're looking at the collision data, it was 2020 to 2024. And so maybe we implemented a project in 2023, but we don't have enough data yet to understand if something is working or if previous engineering treatments are doing their intended purpose. So the next corridor is De La Vina Street from Mission to Mitchell-Torrena. As you've known and been briefed over the years, we have done a lot of treatments on De La Vina in the vicinity of Cottage Hospital. That's still continuing with some curb extensions coming soon, but we have done the lane reduction and installed bike paths, and really from getting a lot of great feedback for all road users with those lane reductions and making it lower stress routes. And we've also done that in the downtown from Carrillo to Haley. But this is another area, and this is something that we've been in progress and started to begin a deeper dive for this. And so I think we will be ready apparently in the new year to do some specific outreach for this corridor with some potential lane reduction for some of the streets. On Las Positas, this is a big one. It's been on the list for a while. Again, we have been doing some safety improvements. This one was one of our very first Vision Zero roadway restriping projects for a portion of it from kind of State Street, Las Positas to San Onofre Road, where again we had a lane reduction and seeing definitely collisions decrease, but and we recently put in the first pedestrian hawk at Stanley and Las Positas. So if you're living in the San Marcan area and you want to go to like Loretta Plaza, now there's another crossing location that feeds right into that neighborhood. But there's a lot more to be doing, I think, along this stretch. And this is, again, where Adams Elementary is. And we're working with MOVE, again, who does our Safe Routes to School outreach. And they help us with putting together hazard assessments for schools where we meet specifically with some of the school safety officials and some of the parents and principal, and so we're hoping to get some early feedback in the beginning of 2026 just for this corridor as well. On Olive Street, this is another entrance into Santa Barbara High, and just again a very popular road corridor. And we want to take a deeper dive at some of the intersections along this stretch. Nepal Street is, the parameters for that is approximately from Coda Street to Quinientos. Nepal and Coda is right at the where Santa Barbara Junior High is, and where we've done intersection improvements right in the vicinity of the junior high. But there's a lot of important destinations, like Our Lady of Guadalupe is a popular destination for a lot of school-age kids for after-school programming, that type of thing. And we want to look at kind of a deeper dive at some of the intersections in that vicinity. All right, and then the last 3 slides all focus on the Upper State Street area. We broke it down into 3 different segments, but this is when you think of some of the collision statistics, like if you're comparing, I don't know, like Olive Street to State Street, it's like there is a lot of collisions in Upper State Street, and I think we were hoping, I think, by this time, when we started this effort, that downtown State Street would have been, I see lots of chuckles, but maybe that would have been resolved, or we've gotten to a project, but that doesn't seem to be happening quite as swiftly as I think we would all have liked, but and kind of Upper State Street was sort of on the next list, but we don't want to wait around for that. Like again, it wasn't a big focus of the bicycle master plan at the time in 2016, mainly because there was in the pecking order of wants, there were other areas that rose to the top, but it wasn't to say that Upper State Street wasn't important. But through the downtown State Street master planning effort, that also came out with a lot of comments. Well, what about Upper State Street? And so we want to take a look at that and how we could look at some potential improvements to, again, benefit all road users. And then we're also seeing a lot of just from the land development side, of course, the redevelopment of the Coombra Plaza area with the project's redevelopment of Macy's and then a separate project for the redevelopment of Sears. But we do anticipate there's going to be a lot more growth in the Upper State Street area. And so we want to be prepared as land development projects come in. And how we could make this corridor safer. We also want to, so that was the particular graph here is just picking up from kind of the 154 to Hitchcock Way. And then we continue down in the kind of San Roque adjacent area. And then eventually getting all the way to Mission Street, which again is a few blocks shy, because I think the downtown master planning effort sold the street, so we won't forget about that. Also in between blocks of as well, as far as for looking for connectivity, etc. So yeah, that's and we're also interested too. There was some like parallel like neighborhood routes that were identified in the bicycle master plan, kind of in the vicinity of Peabody Elementary. So in the new year, we will also be working with MOVE and Peabody just to understand a little bit more for kids walking and biking to school, if there are particular favored routes, neighborhood routes for that, kind of like where we're working on Milpitt Street for the safety, but we did a bicycle boulevard on Aliso Street. So is there any other parallel routes to Upper State that we should also be thinking about? But we don't want to ignore the Upper State, again, by itself. That's a focus effort, but we want to look at parallel too. And so that's what we'll be asking for some initial feedback on. But we did in October go out in webinar and then an in-person meeting about these priority streets and traffic safety messaging. And so just wanted to spend a few minutes of what we've heard so far. And so when we went out to the public, we're playing a little bit of catch up. So you have already, of course, heard about the planning effort and had a deep dive in our collision trends and and a deep dive in the safety surveys. But the community at large hadn't been briefed, and so we did spend some time just higher level of what that was. And then we went over, again, higher, like for the priority streets. And what we really wanted to hear from the public is, we never want to hear like from the public like what they feel is the engineering solution. We want to just feel like it's more like what makes this particular street a high stress street for you, whether you're driving, biking, or walking. As a mother, I always like to to give the example. When are you doing this to your child, whether you're in the car or walking or biking? There's a certain way, like where you herd the child, like why are you doing that and where? So that's the items that we were really asking for feedback at those outreaches. And we've been supplementing that with the survey. That's still, we extended the survey till December 12th. And so if you've noticed on our city news and brief next door, we have been soliciting feedback for that. So I won't be able to go through all of that tonight because the survey is still open. But we will be like posting the results of what we heard, just probably summarizing high level on that. And all the survey is completely fill in the blank because we want to really hear everybody's stories. And then another thing that we asked in these outreaches was prioritizing traffic safety messages, because again, not all of these issues or collisions would be addressed by engineering or by enforcement. Even on the enforcement, we always want to be on the proactive end. What could we be educating the community on? And so we asked for feedback on that, and I'll share another slide that with some of the results. And so one of the initial questions that we asked from the webinar and the in-person meeting was for the streets presented, which were the same streets that I just presented to you tonight. Do you support the city designing a concept plan? And so the general sentiment from the webinar and the in-person meeting was yes. There were some, when we went through some of the notes, additional streets for analysis included Carrillo, Milpas, and La Crumbra. And of course, for Milpas, we know that we have that in design right now, hopefully construction within the next year. And then Carrillo, we have done a lot of improvements up Carrillo Hill, with the Highway Safety Improvement Program monies and some lighting. So that's still under evaluation. I think we would, from Carrillo, from like the freeway into downtown, I think we need to have a little bit more discussion with our emergency for police and fire. If there's any other potential work that we could do on there, and that being an emergency route. So sometimes we're limited on certain countermeasures for that. And then there was a request too for Lacumba Road. And I think that probably also makes sense when we're looking at Kyriel and then State Street and that kind of connecting piece. And then that particular connects like into some of our bike infrastructure, and then again from walking and driving and all of that. So I think that's again something that we will continue to keep on the radar. And then somebody else, I think it was a member from the Strong Towns, was just extending the priority streets for analysis, because they're like, well, hey, if you were to overlap the bike network, it looks like you're 2 blocks shy here, 3 blocks shy. So again, we don't necessarily want to be looking into a bubble again, we're concentrating, or when we make the graphics, that's where we are seeing the sort of the collision hotspots. But we agree that we do need to show connectivity to our network. And then as far as for the personal challenges, that's whether you're walking, biking, or driving, that's what we're still compiling from the various meetings and survey. And any of you also, because tonight we'll have some probably high-level comments, but if there's something specific on a priority street that you really want to dive into, feel free to also take the survey as well. So what I next wanted to share was we're actually really curious the traffic safety topics. And the traffic safety topics that are listed here are I would say our pet peeves that we see, again, from collision data to, and discussions with our members for police and fire as well. And we were curious during the webinar and then in-person meetings, well, what would everybody else sort of rank as, like, if we were to begin our messaging in January, well, right out of the gate, like, what would you rank as your top three? And so we gave everybody 3 dots to put on a chart, and this was the ones that rose to the top. The webinar was done a little bit differently with the dots, but it was feedback through the chat function. So again, all of these topics will be messaged. We're trying to do monthly messages, but we're trying to figure out, well, which ones we release first. So it was both unanimous about like a lot related to speeding and that speed kills. And then kind of ranking as number 2 is intersection safety tips for all road users, and then the no parking in the red zones, bike lanes, crosswalks, sidewalks. And then just don't be distracted, really a targeted message for all road users. And we also asked, well, did we miss anything? And so some of the themes that we heard were educating drivers about passing or overtaking cyclists on single lane roads without a dedicated bike lane. Driver education for driving around e-bikes, issue of drivers passing when a driver is turning right. So kind of similar on the first 2. Using your signals, and that's pointed at I would say both drivers and cyclists and pedestrians on being visible at night. And then just generally how to notify the city about street repairs. So those are additional items on our radar. And if you want it, I also created the same spreadsheet. Like, you can also fill it out on your own if you'd like. And I would love if we could pass that down. Just love to get your opinions. Again, there's not a right or a wrong answer. It's just a matter of preference of. I always joke around, or like, there's a radio station, I think it's 99.9. They call in sometimes, and what are your pet peeves? So this is the traffic safety pet peeve list. So I think it's number 1, 2, and 3. And again, there's not a right or a wrong. We're just curious, especially with you're exposed every other month for traffic safety related item. So you're part of our expert team. So I am curious of what you would rank that as. And as far as for what's next, we're trying to keep the same presentation to the Police and Fire Commission and Neighborhood Advisory Council. We've had, over the past 3 months, issues with quorums for some of the committees or that getting bounced from agendas. And so we will be getting feedback sort of informally where we'll be having briefings with some of the committee members since, again, we're having quorum issues. But I do feel it's important to provide this information to those boards as well. And then, again, we're going to be working on project concepts and, hope to have something to you about certain approaches for these corridors. And we're also trying to get a survey contract for some of the corridors because it's unclear of how much right-of-way we have in certain areas, specifically when we're next to freeways, like Calle Real, for example, of jurisdictional limits and right-of-way limits. And it's very common on our corridors that you don't necessarily have, for example, like an 80 feet through that entire corridor. It could change from 80 to 60, and so what does that look like when we're trying to have upgraded facilities? So, and anyway, we have this planning effort continues on. And again, you're supposed to have a draft plan in April 2026. That concludes the presentation. And we're happy to answer any questions. And again, feel free to write this survey. This is a link to our webpage, but you can access the survey from here.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. And actually, just before we go into committee questions, can you just remind us again what you're looking for from the committee tonight? I heard you say maybe not suggestions for engineering solutions, but do you want us to?
I think that first, let's maybe start simply, do you support us looking into these streets that we listed tonight for further study? And then that would be the first question to you. And did you have any questions about the streets that we're mentioning? And I think, for purposes of time, we probably won't be able to, what I'm not looking for is maybe a 7-minute personal story on one of these streets. I think that was probably best shared, or you could follow up with the email or take the survey. Because again, that's how we design our streets, is really being immersed with the community and understanding kind of the day-to-day and what's that look like. Because then when we're putting our creativity hats on how to make the streets lower stress, it's all the stories that help feed us to make things better.
All right, thank you. And with that, open for committee questions. Go ahead.
Something is missing, and it troubles me. I really hate to say that. This is a huge project, and so much work has been done. But you were there, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there was a request made for hospital data and hospital emergency room data. And I know that you've worked on trying to find it. Mm-hmm. And I kind of thought because we've talked a little bit over the last couple of years that you were trying to get the hospitals involved. The issues seemed to be, they were very anxious about HIPAA regulations, and you don't need private data. You don't need that. But I did bring, and I'm happy to just leave this for the record, I went to Vision Zero San Francisco, and on their website, they have their data section, very brief. I'd like to read it because I think it fits with what we need, and I don't think we have it, unfortunately. San Francisco was one of the first U.S. cities to systematically link police crash data and hospital trauma center data, creating a national model for a high injury network map. The 12% of streets where 68% of severe and fatal traffic crashes occur. The data is proving critical to understanding and acting on the inequities in traffic fatalities for older adults, non-English speaking populations, low-income or disabled individuals, minority populations, and people experiencing homelessness. Safety improvements are now in place on 75 miles of the high injury network. So I'm not trying to bring this up at the last minute, but I'm still discouraged that the hospital has not been more cooperative, or the county, whatever, the county health department, whoever has the data, it needs to be networked for this project, I think, for you to be really thorough, in my opinion, not just police data. That's it.
Would you like me to respond? So I'm hearing what the question is, why isn't that in the plan to date? And yes, I would love, that is our model, the San Francisco, to tie public health data with the police collision reports. And really what we're reporting and what all these collision trends are reported collisions. So most collisions statistically are not reported. And that's why Committee Member Rodriguez is like, yeah, it really helps tell the full story. Unfortunately, to date, we have not been able to crack the HIPAA issue, because and it's just, yeah, there's layers of complexity, but we're not giving up. And the biggest issue is we like to know where the incident occurred, because if we're going to make improvements, we need to know the location. So that's the biggest, the hiccup is that becomes like the HIPAA violation. But obviously, other jurisdictions have been able to navigate that, and some of the in certain cities, they've assigned an epidemiologist because of the high number of like collisions, and they have like additional resources for that. So. The conversation will continue. We're also working closely with UCSB we've tried to crack the nut. Well, if you won't share it with government, can you share it with an educational institution instead, where you can kind of have an extra filter, but that nut has not been cracked either yet. What we have been working with UCSB, and they have the sort of sister grant to this grant, and we've been working closely with Trissel and Nelson of UCSB, the geography department, and she's created, it's like a subset, but it's not all collision data, but of bikemaps.org, where people will self-report near misses or their own collisions. So we're starting to have at least that story, and then through GIS, kind of understanding a way spatially, like we have our bike map, but it doesn't mean that you have to be on the route on the bike map. You could be anywhere in the city, and so that's something that we're tracking. And then we've actually through a couple of their grants, been given cameras to help to kind of understand some of the other big picture. So I don't want to go off onto a big tangent, but hasn't quite gotten there yet. And it's also when we did have the conversations that it's in their own coding, just like, how e-bikes were not coded until the end of 2022, really not only locally, but nationally. But when somebody comes into the emergency room, they're just treating so if somebody came in, they have a hurt knee, let's put it on their record, hurt knee. They don't have the why, they just have a hurt knee. And so even if we were to pull some of the data, we might not know that hurt knee was because of bike-related or vehicle versus ped-related collision. So there's deficiencies on their end for their own recording purposes. So those are just kind of some of the known limitations, but it certainly, we've seen it happen. It's a wonderful database that San Francisco has. We would like to still continue to strive for that.
Thank you.
If I could follow up on that real quickly, it's my recollection that the county grand jury report on e-bikes did get data from Cottage. Is that correct to your knowledge? And do you know if that was compulsory or they just chose to share it with the court and won't share it with others?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. But I know that anecdotally, and I know Cottage, there's staff that have reached out to us too, and especially, if you're the emergency room doctor handling the head traumas, like you want to be raising awareness. So they may have gotten it that way. I'd have to take a deeper dive on that. But and I think that some of it is just anecdotal. We might be able to just get trends. But we are most interested in the where. But some of it would definitely understand the trends. And again, from an education perspective, then that's still important. So,
All right, any additional questions?
I'm sorry, I don't want to belabor it, but I have a separate, it's not the same question. I apologize. I just have when you have pedestrian collision, bicycle collision, is that pedestrian with a car? And the bicycle is bicycle with a car. So all of these involve cars.
but not, to your point.
Where's the man?
Derek Bailey with Traffic Engineering. All the pedestrian involved collisions, save maybe one or two over the entire data set, are involved with vehicles. There were just a couple that involved bikes. Bike collisions generally fall into a couple buckets. One are solo crashes, so bikes crashing into not a vehicle, and then vehicles are the other. So, generally with pedestrians, it's vehicle involved, but bikes, there's a pretty big proportion of them that are solo.
Thank you. And I'd like to point out that people have bike accidents and get hurt really bad on streets and don't ever go to the hospital, they just go home. So they're useless to us, the people who hurt themselves on slippery roads, and we never know that the road was slippery there because he or she never told anybody, they just went home. So I know you're doing the very best you can, I really appreciate it.
Just on this note, so all the data that we have here, this is all basically from police reports or something where it's been reported to a governmental agency, I assume the city of Santa Barbara, and that's all that's reflected here. That's all, okay. So, yeah, so we're only, to your point, we're only seeing little part.
All right, I have a question. Go ahead.
I'm just curious with Castillo, there's a very nice bike path there, single traffic lane, you're separated from parked cars. I know you don't want to get into specific engineering, but are you really just worried about more the intersections at the two ends, or is there something else there?
Could you go back to the Castillo?
Don't have it locked in, Derek. There we go.
There. And so this theme is going to be common throughout all the corridors that we've been discussing this evening. We haven't taken a deep dive into these corridors yet. Kind of what we're saying is, are we on the right track, and should we be taking a deeper dive? But seeing we're looking at this collision map here, there's Mission Street on the left and Mitchell Train on the right. The collisions are fairly spread out along the corridor. Doesn't seem to be a really high concentration. There are some nighttime involved collisions that are in the middle of a few blocks that we're seeing up there. Some bike involved collisions in the middle of blocks. So a deep dive on any of these corridors is going to be starting to look for patterns of collisions. It's going to start to look more specifically at, are there countermeasures that we can actually do something if there is a pattern? Or if it's really a hodgepodge, mixed bag of different collision types, maybe the solutions are incremental. In other words, there may not be a really high concentration of nighttime collisions, but a lighting corridor might be an incremental solution. So things like that. That's kind of what we're getting at here is we don't have solutions this evening. We haven't taken a really deep dive into any of these yet. But these corridors, for the length and the severity of the collisions, are ranking high on our list.
I have a,
I will add, in addition to everything Jessica asked too, yeah, if there are other corridors that you think we should be looking at too, we are taking that input.
all right, I have a few questions, if everyone else is set. I noticed, so Haley is marked as one of the top 5%, and also marked as an area with recent improvement. So therefore it's not on the list. I don't actually know when the bike path on Haley was built. Is that, yeah. What's the history of Haley that puts it into the improvements are done?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Yeah, that map that you were showing before. No, the one that showed, yep, that one. That's a good one. The bike lanes on Haley were installed around 2012, 13, somewhere in there. But 2024 and early 2025, the city, just through a maintenance project, did sidewalk repairs and pavement repairs on Haley Street from the freeway on the west into the east side. And so as part of that project, there's accessibility improvements that are made at corners, but while there was a crew mobilized doing major work out there, we also use that as an opportunity to do some other work. So there were 13 new streetlights installed, there was a new traffic signal installed at Olive Street. 2 intersections got curb extensions and high visibility crosswalks at Nopal and Quarantina. High visibility crosswalks throughout the entire corridor. There was some traffic signal modifications at Haley and Anacapa. Some leading pedestrian intervals are now programmed along the corridor. So when I talk about incremental safety improvements too, those are improvements that they may not have been targeting a specific collision pattern, but they are safety improvements that we feel are going to prevent collisions in the long run. So as far as what more could be done on that corridor, I think for now, given that we did do quite a bit of work with traffic signals and some crosswalks and everything like that, probably best to leave it for a few years and just see how effective it was.
All right, thank you. Next question. Oh, I noticed on just the way the map and the icons are set up is that I actually didn't even realize they were 2 different icons. There's the bicycle involved is kind of technically a solid black bicycle icon, and then other is a green square, but bicycle is always also other. Can you just kind of describe what the sort of icon arrangement is that?
Yeah, and, Mr. Bailey, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of there's a big category when we looked at our collision pattern and results is under the other category. And when we took a deeper dive of, well, what's making up that other category, it seemed really high. Predominantly, it was bicycle-related collisions. So that's what that was. So you'll see more, like, very common with the green square. But then there's other bicycle-related collisions that, yeah, like in the instance, I think that had a purple, so that would be like a broadside, probably a vehicle versus bike, for example, on this particular graphic that I have up.
Yeah, there's a couple others in there. But
Yes.
It's a lot of green squares with bikes on them, so.
Yes.
Okay, I was just curious about that. All right, I think that is all my questions. Go.
All right. Okay, I tried to write mine in advance this time, so feel free to give me the short answer because I have a few. The first is just a more general question of why pick 10 streets? Is there like a resource allocation consideration that, like, if we really didn't think one of these streets was as high priority as something that wasn't listed, it would have to go? Or do we just add another for that kind of feedback?
The short answer is when we were putting together the high injury network, we actually coordinated everything. It wasn't necessarily, there were segments of streets, and they were roughly, I would say half a mile was each segment. And so when we were looking at it, it was more, even a deeper dive into the segments, and then broader once we started to put together of what rose to the top was typically segments. I had a gigantic Excel spreadsheet for that, and then we were then looking at was it more than just the one little segment of the street or a little bit more? So. But as far as, again, we were sticking to the high injury network, because again, that's where 88% of our collisions occur. But there wasn't necessarily of a resource issue or of why cut it off at 10. The areas in gray, and I may have skipped over that in the presentation, but those segments, we weren't seeing obvious engineering solutions to those. It felt like it was more on the education and enforcement side, especially like in these areas when you think of the State Street and vicinity of bars, Funk Zone area, that's where we had that high percentage of DUI-related collisions. So that's why the areas in gray weren't rising to the top, because we weren't seeing, again, engineering solutions to address that.
Okay, gotcha. And so just generally, once we have the concept streets or priority streets identified and you take a look, you're going to take a look at them and analyze them. When it gets like to final approval for this plan, what's like the next step to getting to capital projects? Is it going to go through our typical process, or is there specific uniqueness to the federal process laid out here?
Right. I think for to manage expectations, I think for when we think of engineering solutions, like in this planning effort, you're not going to see full drawings of a particular corridor. We'll probably mention, curb extensions here, multi-use path here, raise, like it would be more in like icons. And then once we have the adopted action plan, and again, you would be making a recommendation to City Council. So once, hopefully, City Council will adopt the plan. Once we have an adopted plan, and associated with that plan is typically like whatever's called out for proposed improvements. It would be via like a resolution that says, okay, these are our proposed improvements. City Council, do we have permission to now seek grant funding for those solutions? And so we usually get it memorialized in writing. And then we can seek grant opportunities. So in this particular grant source, the Safe Streets for All program, they do have implementation grant monies, but you have to have an adopted plan first. So it's step one. So that's one source, but we are open to all grant sources related to traffic safety items. So then we look to see, well, what's up and coming and what would be a good fit for any potential grant.
And so have the criteria for the federal implementation grants changed substantially since the turnover in administration that created this plan to the one we have now? Or is this one untouched so far?
Well, we were very fortunate. We were locked in because some of the efforts or implementation projects initially went all on hold, but we had an executed contract before the change of administration. So that's how we were able to continue on. But some of the people that had projects on hold from the following year have been continuing on. So we are hoping that there will be additional cycles for implementation under this source, but we don't like to put all of our eggs in one basket. So if another project from a local, state, or federal grant comes up, then we want to be ready to pounce on all efforts. So, and then what has changed is and that will be another probably topic in February, is the equity of what was considered disadvantaged. That changed.
Right.
But
Okay.
after consultation with the state, we can reference the state, what would be from a federal perspective, what qualifies for disadvantaged community or underrepresented community, environmental justice community. It has lots of different labels. What we plan to address in the chapter is what qualifies locally at state level and federal level.
Okay, got it. Great, thank you, that's really helpful. So, yeah, on this slide, I feel like De La Vina and Haley, I was gonna ask about why they're orange. So the two left, I'm curious, because I looked for, like, is there a project that happened that I can't remember or something that's happening? So the two that I'm curious why they are labeled orange is Carrillo Street from the freeway to State Street. That one, and then also, I think you said for State Street, Mission to Micheltorena, that might just be included if as part of the upper State Street or lower State Street evaluations. But since it's labeled orange, I'm just curious, is there a project that was done recently or coming for, those two pieces?
So your first one was De La Vina?
Or no, Carrillo from the freeway to State Street.
Carrillo from the State Street. So it was from the freeway, from Castillo all the way up Carrillo Hill was a lighting project.
Yep.
And then it's been on our list for a long time, but with that lighting project was a big intersection improvement at Carrillo San Andres.
Right, I mean the part north of the freeway, because I think it's also
So
labeled
north
orange.
of the freeway.
Yeah.
Right, so the entire project, like Jessica mentioned, went from Castillo Street on the east up to Miramonte, going up the hill. On the downtown side of the freeway, the project included new lighting at all the intersections. There were some traffic signal improvements, high visibility crosswalks. And that's really all we can do with that corridor without changing capacity, taking away lanes and that sort of thing. So on the downtown side of the freeway, we've pretty much done all we can do. On the other side of the freeway, the new crosswalk went in at San Pasqual, a lot of new lighting. The intersection at San Andreas was reconfigured, and then lighting up the hill. So again, that's another corridor like Haley Street where there's been a lot of work done in the last few years. And so now we're just kind of in the evaluation phase to see what kind of effect it's had on collisions. So like I mentioned, though, the further mobility improvements would be with the trade-off.
Gotcha. And then that one part of State Street that's orange on here.
I believe that's Anacapa, is that Anacapa Street? Oh, no, that is State Street, below Mission. There is a project that is in construction right now that is doing a lighting corridor along that project. At the tail end of that, the street is going to be repaved, high visibility crosswalks, leading pedestrian intervals, accessible push buttons, that sort of thing. So there are some safety improvements. Again, more on the incremental, as we would describe them, but that's what's reflected there.
Any consideration for the restriping for things like buffered bike lanes, just considering we had that fatality in that piece pretty recently?
There's not enough room for buffered bike lanes without changing the lane configuration out there, but we did pave the block between Sola and Mitchell-Trina about a year ago and kind of optimized the lane widths, I'll say that, just to make the bike lane a little bit wider. So that will continue up to Mission Street once the street is paved.
Gotcha. Before I forget, I'll slip in a comment on that specifically, just having recently lived right off of that. I find that since State Street was closed to vehicles, that piece has very, very little traffic compared to the amount that it's seemingly designed for from a previous era. So I'll just put that out there. Okay. And then I'm curious, I was curious why it wasn't orange, which was Chapala from Mission Street to Alomar, which I think is, one of your priority identified streets. I thought that was sort of recently, kind of given a road diet. Is that correct?
Sorry, that was Chapala above Mission?
Yeah, to Alomar.
So the bike lane on Chapala has been there for 20-ish years, but in 2021, the street was slurry sealed, and the lanes were kind of, the widths and everything were changed, and the buffers were put in with the green conflict striping. So that's about 4 years old.
Okay, got it. Okay, let me see if I can finish here. So Cannon Perdido, I recall, was like in the bike master plan, and then I forget where it was, but it was sort of nixed or deferred for a while because of like justification being we have parallel options. So I'm just curious, like, has the thinking about Cannon Perdido changed about? I'm just curious because I remember at the time being like, oh, okay, I guess maybe Coda's sufficient replacement, but
That's how I understood. Yeah, Cannon Perdido was kind of lower down on the pecking order, and but not to say that it wasn't important either. So that's why we still have it on the list to analyze further. But I think for at the time and needs, Ortega Street was the one that was ranked higher for destination areas because that feeds right into the junior high. So that was the one that got prioritized first for a bike lane. But again, when we talk about like some of our corridors will have limited real estate on what we can and can't do. So on Ortega, there's going east is the bike lane, which is really nice, but then it's shared going west. And so that's what we wanted to get some more cameras for Cannon Perdido Street to see what the observations are for the dominant bicycle movement.
okay,
If there is one.
right, yeah, that's definitely an interesting one to me. Okay, I think I'll just have one last question instead of asking about 4 other streets. Kind of just more generally, why not just go down like this chart, right, of the weighted scores of severe and fatal, like by length? Why not just go from the top to the bottom in terms of getting the most sort of safety improvement? I understand, some streets, gap connections, that's really important consideration. There's just a couple in here that I'm a little, was honestly surprised to see compared to, some streets you kind of hear about all the time. So I'm just kind of curious generally about, yeah, why not just go straight from top to bottom?
It's a great question. And I think when I presented these, I did it in alphabetical order, but that's something on our, spreadsheets. We were looking at the weighted rankings for that. And most of the ones that are ranking at the top are ones that
Right, you
we've
have
known about, and that's why we're in final designs on those corridors. So, but that's a good point to think about, because we have a list of projects. The priority for those projects, will we have like what we think is the next 3 years, next 5 years? And I think that's something that we need to think about when we're putting this together. But sometimes you take things or like lower hanging fruit, or is it something that we can quickly do with a pavement maintenance project where it might be taken out of order because we happen to be slurry sealing or doing some roadway work there. So you'll still have some that might leave the pecking order, but it's a good point that ideally you want to address the ones with the highest collisions.
Gotcha. Okay, I appreciate the answer. Thank you. I think that's it from you.
Just a couple of quick questions. So I'm sorry to hear that Cottage is stonewalling us. Not surprised, but have you guys gone to the ambulance providers, either AMR, and got that information, or is that already in here?
No, we did chat with the public health department that has the AMR
Yeah, I think county got it.
information. So, just haven't been, again, it comes down to the location issue. We have been at the state public health issue because I happened to be at some training about e-bikes, and they were reporting on all communities and like, hey, wait a second, they have our community. How are they getting the data? And so there's a lot of databases we were shown, like at the state public health area. But even with that, like even when we were seeing that particular presentation, they still you have to hit a number of collisions before they even show it on a map, kind of for the HIPAA. So it's great for like the public health data and understanding trends. So maybe maybe we can never get to that. It seems so simple. No, you don't want more collisions, but it seems to us like we're all in the business of taking care of our community. Like, why can't we?
It's infuriating.
Do this, but yes, welcome to our litigious society now. But again, we're optimistic. Don't want to give up yet, and maybe that's just we haven't thought of it. Maybe a different way to ask the questions.
Yeah. Okay. Other comment here. I love studying all this stuff. I just would encourage you guys when looking into this to not look into it necessarily to narrow yourself down to just looking at the street. For example, when you look at Upper State and you see all these bike accidents, the solution may be to utilize the streets right next to it to divert traffic or bicycles onto those streets. So I'd encourage you guys, just don't narrow yourself down to State Street because there's other stuff near there and you're probably already thinking that way anyways. But those are my only comments.
Sorry, I forgot one. Castillo between Cabrillo and Haley so it's gray here, but I know we have a design that's out there. Is that just we're waiting on eventually getting that funding from someone, and then we'll?
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And then committee member Metzenberg. Yeah, what we're struggling with on State Street is because beyond that, then you have Hollister, and then it takes you basically through unincorporated county to all the way out to Goleta. And so we still feel really important, like at the end of the day, like eventually, like even when we think of, like you said, don't narrow yourself just to one street, and we can't narrow ourselves just within the city limits too. We have to think bigger in how our pieces connect beyond our city boundaries. So we definitely don't want to just put a pin on State Street, because we do see the regional connection and importance to it. But it is, there's lots of neighborhoods that tie in too. So that's why if we want to take a bigger look. And then, of course, then there's the Foothill Cathedral Oaks, which is, the county has some, I think they're about to release the 30% design for one road section to separate out road users. That hopefully becomes maybe the template for the whole corridor, but that, you start to mix in Caltrans jurisdiction and everything, but that's another big nut to crack too, as far as really of significant regional importance as well.
All right, if that is all for committee questions, do we have any public comment on this topic?
Yes, we have Barry Remis for public comment, in-person public comment, and no online speakers.
All right, good evening. Chair Slag and committee members. Yes, I'm Barry Remis, and with Move Santa Barbara County. And based on the fact that these 10 priority corridors or streets have been compiled and identified based on at least the limited collision data that's available, we do support and encourage you to support recommending to council that they approve the adoption of this policy. But I also want to point out a couple things, and some things you've heard before. Committee Member Rodriguez, thank you for bringing up Vision Zero, because while this is in itself a project that is federally funded, the Safe Streets for All project, it certainly, without a doubt, really ties into the overarching Vision Zero policy and strategy that the city adopted. And we encourage your recommendation that as this effort, this action plan effort and initiative moves forward, that it really be dovetailed and tied in, especially on the education component, so that the community in general realizes that it's part and parcel of the city's Vision Zero strategy. So many people in the community still just aren't aware that Santa Barbara is a Vision Zero community, and so it really just benefits everybody to really piece them together and understand that. And also, assuming that you give your recommendation, to realize that in our changing community, with more and more development coming down the road, pardon the pun, with housing development, et cetera, both in Lower State Street and the Upper State Street areas, and then thinking about the connectivity between those two areas, to just, wherever possible, think about, with the varying not only multimodal but multi-speed components of what's going to be happening as e-bikes continue to proliferate, that different modes of traffic are moving at different speeds and much more radically going forward, so that separation and safety and protectiveness of the corridors for more vulnerable users is key to being able to save more lives and at the same time be able to enhance the connectivity between different parts of our communities as well. So those are things to think about as you consider your recommendation to approve the action plan. All right, thanks and happy holidays.
All right, thank you. And we will now open the floor to committee comments. Anyone want to start with comments? Go ahead.
I'll go. I probably have a lot, so I wanted to give folks a chance to go before me. I love this. I think this is really exciting that we're like continuing to evaluate the city we live in and how we make it safer and more functional instead of just accepting things as they are, as if they've always been that way, because we know they're not, especially as transportation is concerned. And I think in preparation for this meeting, I went back and looked through the whole, safety data we got from 2020 to 2024. And I think it would be great to get this tied in with Cottage's data and UCSB's project. But I think the trends are going to be the same based off what I've looked at overall. And I think the increase in e-bike prominence and collisions and percentage at fault and the age of the users and the different kinds and classifications and just how much community focus there is on that, like we're going to need to overall kind of reevaluate how we look at these kinds of projects and future-proof them as much as possible. And so I'm encouraged to see that that's kind of starting to become part of the evaluation. Other comments, I think it would be helpful, because I noticed in here that part of the weighting is the Caltrans LRSM cost to society metric about like what the cost to society is per kind of injury. I think later on that data could be quite helpful in terms of specific plans and projects for certain streets, like what is the cost to society that we're having from the collision patterns we've seen, and what's the ROI, even if you just are going to be crass and put a dollar amount, right? Like we ideally wouldn't, right? Because it's human life, but like, this is competing sometimes with other city government priorities, right? So putting the ROI on some of these things can, I think, bolster public support where it might not otherwise exist. I probably looked at this 10 streets a little bit too zero sum at first, with the view of like, oh, well, if it's going to be 10, I'd kick off a few of these and replace them with others. And I think I can just generally say, I think it was slide 23, kind of the feedback you got from the community. That's pretty much where I'm at on the three that I think are really missing from here. Lacoumbra isn't in the tier 1, but I think is such a key connection, like you mentioned, to the MODOC across the whole South County thing we're getting there, south of the freeway and going over the freeway and connecting to future projects on Upper State Street and Lacoumbra Plaza. I think that's going to be really critical. I know there's some signal improvements coming eventually, but I would just put out a second on that. And I think Curio as well. I'm a Curio commuter every day, both ways. I get the capacity point. I do think there's probably some potential to look at it, just even if it's not a lane removal conversation, because you do see a lot of bike activity on there, and I think it's probably the street I see the most sort of not ideal bike activity. I'll say I've even seen SBPD riding their bikes on the sidewalk, because you would be I'm just going to say, you'd be insane to ride your bike on Curio during most of the day, in my opinion. And I think that's something we have to look at when it's one of the major connecting points from most of the city to downtown. But I hear that there's a lot of trade-offs. I just think safety has to be the first amongst those considerations. Milpas, same thing. I love the project we're going to get on Milpas. I think you've heard this from me before and others, and probably will forever, that just like it's number one in our new data. And I know there were discussions in 2019, but this data is post 2019. It is, from Coda to Quintos, the most dangerous street in the city of Santa Barbara. The bike maps data, it's the most dangerous section to bike, I think, in the South Coast from their data, if I'm not correct, or if I'm correct, if not just the city. So I think the intersection improvements are going to be great. I just think if we're going to restripe things, whenever we're restriping things and repaving things, we should be looking at what else can we do. And I think this is a great opportunity to have that conversation, because even if there's a concern that it's just, there's not, folks are still some folks are a little angsty about Alisos, right? And maybe that's part of why we're looking at Opal Street as another parallel route. Like, I think I would just generally encourage, why not put out a concept? These plans were kind of come up with, I think we've had 3 different council members for that area since 2019. So I think it's due for another discussion. I'm not trying to say, here's a project, do the project. For bikes, is my main concern that's not being addressed with the current ATP project on Milpas. I'll leave that there. The business owners, I said I'll leave that there. I won't leave it there. The business owners are started a new push to kind of refocus the city's attention on the Milpas, and I think this ties into Upper State as well. I would discourage, at least on a traffic diversion treatment, on San Remo and Via Lucero as a parallel route. I think the destinations and the trip generators are on the arterials, right? This is the city we live in, and so it needs to be, for the benefit of the businesses and the community. I think it needs to be safe to bike on Upper State, on Milpas, just like we're looking at Cliff Drive and San Andreas on the west side and the Mesa. So I think it's great the city's starting to kind of look a little bit beyond downtown and into the neighborhood business centers and centers of activity. So I'll just say that, and I think No Paul Street's interesting. I went to Santa Barbara Junior High, so I get it's connected to the school. I do think you're gonna get comments of why not just put that energy to Milpas and float an idea and see what reaction you get. I think the data is showing a pretty substantial increase in just the last 2 years of severe and fatal injuries for cyclists in particular, while at the same time people are still driving less than in the pandemic. And so I think that and the survey data we've been getting all is screaming for separated facilities, protected facilities that separate users. And I think, not to totally kind of put words in their mouth, but I think some of the public safety feedback is a little bit apprehensive about mixing bikes and pedestrians now, especially with the rise of e-bikes. And so I think I'm starting to honestly move in that direction personally, where I wasn't before. And I think as much as possible as we can get those kinds of treatments on these plans, that would be great. I know you don't want specific engineering solutions, but I do think the ones that I've seen working in the community so far are pedestrian signals or pedestrian priority on the crosswalks, conflict striping, physical protection, I think are the key engineering elements. And then, sure, that's plenty for you, but let me see if there's anything else. I think just given the limited resources, if you were to, in my opinion, add some of the ones that are missing here, like Mission and Curio and La Cumbra and Milpas for the bikes, if putting those on the list meant you had to take something off the list, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I think those would be just based off of the KSI data, Nopal, and the Chapala piece from Mission to Alomar. But the rest of them, I think, all have a really strong argument, both from the safety data and the survey results and connecting the gaps in the community. So yeah, that's that. And I'll close with saying I'm really, really excited about Upper State Street in particular. I think it's a long time coming, and it just needs it. It's just been too long. I think you're gonna get some strong feelings on both sides of that. I think there's plenty of room. It's like the widest street we have, right? So I think there's a way we can figure it out. So I'd encourage you to be as bold as possible on Upper State Street. And yeah, that's that. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll go to committee member Rodriguez next.
I'm ready to propose a recommendation that we could discuss. I think, are we going to support this plan? Do we have a specific paragraph that's already been designed for us?
I think, the first question was just do you support us moving forward with these streets that we presented tonight?
Yeah.
And then was there anything he felt was missing from the list?
Okay. I think I just needed to clarify if that was what we're basically here about. That's all.
All right, any other comments? All right, I have a couple I'd want to add in before we go to a recommendation. I think overall, I really appreciate this compilation. However, I think it is, compared to the entire list of high priority networks, I do feel like I'm making a recommendation a little bit with incomplete information, given that we don't have a markup like this for every priority network. So I trust that you have looked at it and you have made good decisions, but I just don't have that information. So I agree with our public commenter that I think we do need to be incorporating the Vision Zero promotion into the educational component, which we haven't talked about a little bit. I'm not really all that sure about relying on educational messaging in general for a lot of these gray areas. I don't know that I would be really excited or recommend that specifically. You know, statistically, most people think they are far above average drivers. So I think most people see messaging like that and they're like, it's great that they're warning those other terrible drivers. So I just don't want to say that it's okay that we're going for educational messaging on some of these corridors. I'm actually wondering if it's possible to mark the lower State Street area as an improved corridor that has received changes that have made it safer. Because it used to be a bright red spot on the Vision Zero map, and it is not now, and I think that should be acknowledged. Upper State just needs so much, and I agree that, you know, the reason people are on it is because they're going to the places on Upper State, like they might cut through side streets once they're in and out, but they're not gonna completely avoid Upper State. It needs to be included. I will also, understanding that we are avoiding engineering solutions, just wanted to add on, as long as we're kind of talking about the Haley corridor, it's not on our list, but the Haley and State intersection, I see so many cars coming up from the south and then turning right, but the bike lane is on the right, and I would just love to see, even just pulling the we could get 15 people and go out and just yank those barriers apart 5 feet, and so bikes can move to the left and bike straight forward rather than, I think it's on, is it going across De La Vina onto Sola? Is that the one I'm thinking of, where there's the little mini bike lane crossing? I might be getting my intersections wrong. Sola de la Vina, yeah. I mean, obviously not something that fancy as, as long as we're perpetually stuck on what downtown is, but just a little separation. And then I think lastly, this has been my bane lately. I think one of our other comments was to look at not just the streets, but what's around it. And I think on this kind of Chapala stretch that is marked as a gray area, of which education might work better. Chapala is a messy street, and I don't think you can educate yourself out of so much of it, but I think this area I'm specifically looking at is the parking lot behind MTD. So there's the city bike lot building, which I use, which not very many people use. There's the large B-cycle station, which apparently is one of the less used ones there. And I just think it needs to be known that that parking lot is awful to bike in and out of. Going in, it's not so bad. You can go to Figueroa and then kind of cut around the drop-down arm. But to get out, you either have to take the out corridor and then go on to Chapala in front of 6 buses and all of the cars there's 5 lanes of cars, or you do what I do every day and you go out the in way and hope that a car doesn't come around the corner on Figueroa and into the spot. And there's just no other way to get out of that parking lot. And it's this spot that the city is promoting as this is our bike building. And we just need a little driveway on the side or something. So I'm that's my engineering solution, and I'll stop there. I think we are maybe ready to move into a recommendation. I think overall, I've heard that, generally in favor of looking at these plans. I think we've heard a little bit of critique of some of the locations picked and maybe some alternate ones around it, but I don't know if anyone wants to formalize that. Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible, and I know it's getting late, but I am deeply troubled by the fact that the cottage health system is blowing us off. I feel like, I know I talked with one of the vice presidents, but I was just a citizen. I was just a volunteer person. And my perspective is, as a, public health professional for years, that having adequate data is going to be crucial to your funding. I mean, it's crucial to ensuring that the money that you get is spent in the right way. And if you don't know what's happening, you can't act on it. So I'm annoyed that you're not being assisted. So if there's any way that in our recommendations, we can maybe get the mayor to call the president of Cottage Hospital and say, you know what, this is going to affect our budget if you can't give us appropriate accident data as you have available. And if San Francisco can do it, why can't Santa Barbara? So I'm kind of pushing on that. So that's my,
Do you have wording for that?
well, no.
I think she just said it.
Well, I could say, as I said, I did keep the wording that we support moving forward with the 10 streets we're recommending and encourage somehow the opportunity to create a high injury network model similar to the one in San Francisco. Well, San Francisco was the first city to systematically link data, and we would like to emulate that model, and the committee supports anything that the department can do to create that collaboration. It's like our staff are going to their staff, and there's nobody higher up that's saying this is crucially important.
Can I ask a question? Jessica, would it be helpful to you in your efforts if we made a more formal recommendation on this item about that point and also suggesting additional streets, maybe not substitutions, but additions?
Yeah, I think for committee member Rodriguez, and that we are working on a policy section, and I think with our first, we had policies under our Vision Zero strategy, and it was to work with health professionals, emergency service, like police and fire, et cetera. But I think we need to probably, when we look at some of the policies, be even more specific. And I think maybe that's where we could, I think when we return for that section, maybe on the policy side of framework and commit, like, we also have to have like plan feedback loops to measure sort of success and that type of thing. So maybe we need to think about it some more, but maybe that's where, as a starting point, as far as for tonight, maybe it's just to, continue to explore, how we can obtain the crucial data from
Supporting moving forward with this 10th Street plan and expanding outreach for effective or for accurate accident data from medical sources, or what would be a proper term?
I think that works.
Yeah, yeah.
We understand.
Yeah, because you need to have some teeth if they're going to ever pay attention. Because if it's not a high priority for them making money, why should they bother with you? Sorry.
And then the part two to the question of Committee Member Baki was, if you want to be more specific, I think if there was naming additional street areas, and was there anything else, Derek? Because I know that you mentioned that to request additional feedback on, what are we missing? So I think that's appropriate if you want us to look at a few more areas.
Well, then I know we don't usually make formal motions, but I'm happy to try to summarize what we've heard.
Yeah, I was just gonna maybe add in, and that we'll work on the sentence, but I have, so that the committee move forward with, the recommended, priority streets for further study, or we can add in a modification there. And expand effort to obtain accurate hospital, injury data, and then my addition might be, expresses skepticism that educational efforts will be sufficient to address some of the high priority, what is the exact wording? High priority routes.
Maybe we could say prioritize engineering solutions.
Yeah, that's better. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I think that is going to be included. I think that talking about go forward with the streets, consider some extra streets, and look for a better way to find data. I think think about education is kind of a little more subtle point that we don't need to add at this point. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, education isn't even your budget, is it?
It's in addition to, so we had some, I did have some initial funding from our Vision Zero strategy implementation, and most of our outreach to date for Vision Zero has been telling the why of our recent capital infrastructure projects, and we haven't really touched on sort of the pet peeve areas, and it's something that has been on our list for a while. So I do have a budget. We are working. We have Nelson Nygaard. Specifically, we're working with Drew Van Hingel, who some of you know as our former mobility coordinator and traffic engineer, very familiar with our area to help with some of the messaging. So we do have a budget dedicated for those. So we didn't want to wait for this planning effort to kind of address those pet peeves. So that's, but we wanted to kind of use this effort in tandem to bring awareness and kind of share what those messages are. So in some ways, it's already education, like these are rising to the top. Do you agree, or how to prioritize? But we do have some funding, and we agree with you that it's not education alone, or enforcement alone, or engineering alone that will solve the issues. It's really multi-pronged, and it's, I think, for us at this point in time, for us to stay silent and not pushing. And not have any messaging on our, like, these pet peeves that is not good. Like, we do need to have something. So that will be coming out. But I think we do appreciate the comment of just the prioritizing the engineering solutions where they're feasible.
And I do agree that I think people want to feel that the city is doing something and trying, so I'll retract that portion. Did you, or?
What's our summary motion?
Okay, I can try, and please feel free to add or disagree. So I guess a motion that the committee recommends staff continue to pursue and evaluate the 10 proposed priority corridors consistent with the safety data and the ongoing community outreach to encourage efforts to pursue data from hospital providers on crash to aid in that effort, to prioritize engineering solutions wherever possible, and to also consider engineering concepts for other high injury network streets such as I think I heard Haley, Curio, La Cumbra, Milpas, and Mission. And I think that was
That's
it.
it, that was lovely.
Is there any other street I missed? Or? I think those are the big ones. Yeah.
I feel okay with that.
That-
All right, is everyone,
I think I need a second, right?
yeah, do we have a second?
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay, well, second from Committee Member Rodriguez. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. And with that, we adjourn at 7:19.
Wishing everybody a wonderful and safe holiday season.
Thank you very much.